Imagine waking up on a crisp winter morning. The air in your bedroom is it's freezing,
Mm-hmm.
and the sky outside your window is this heavy, bruised white.
Like a massive snowstorm just completely blanketed your city overnight.
Exactly. You stretch and you call out to the dog, usually sleeping heavily at the foot of your bed.
But there's no answering thump of a tail.
Right, nothing. So you walk out to the kitchen to feed the cat, but the bowl is untouched.
It's eerie.
It is. You look up the window expecting to see pigeons huddling on the cathedral roof.
Or maybe a neighborhood stray slinking along the frozen fence.
Yeah, but there is just nothing. A profound, unnatural silence has settled over everything.
Total isolation.
Every single animal in your city, from the smallest mouse in the walls to the loudest parrot in the pet shop, has inexplicably vanished.
And right in the middle of a supernatural snowstorm, too.
Welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore the intricate, magical, and frankly, deeply psychological world found within our source material.
Which is, of course, Charlie Bone and the Hidden King by Jenny Nimmo.
Right. Now, for those of you who have been following this universe, you already know we are dealing with a spectacularly rich tapestry of lore.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this specific installment really shifts the paradigm.
It takes a very sharp turn.
Yeah, we are moving past the standard magical school tropes here. We're plunging headfirst into brutal family betrayal.
The weaponization of history.
Yes, and a 900-year-old grudge that is violently bleeding into the modern everyday world.
It really is a fascinating and profoundly dark landscape to navigate.
It is.
To really understand the mechanics of what's happening here, we have to recognize that the sources we're examining...
The descendants of the Red King.
Exactly. The descendants and their endowments at Bloor's Academy. They're taking a sharp turn into the consequences of generational trauma.
Right, because we all know the basics of this universe, right?
Endowed children,
right.
Oppressive Gothic institutions, magical bloodlines.
Yeah, but what this particular text demands we look at is how the sins, the abdicated responsibilities, and deeply buried secrets of our ancestors.
They don't just sit in the past.
No, they don't. They actively construct the terrifying reality the characters are forced to live in today.
The past in this world is never actually dead.
Mm.
It's a dormant virus, just waiting for the right environmental conditions to wake up and mutate.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting at the very foundation of that dormant virus.
The Red King's legacy.
Yes. The source material opens with a prologue that isn't just world building.
No, it's a breathtakingly sad character study.
It really is. We see the Red King, and he is entirely consumed by this centuries-old sorrow.
Because his queen... Bernice is dead.
Right. And the weight of outliving the people you love has finally broken him.
Completely broken him.
He's walking into a golden autumn forest with his only remaining true friend.
The Welsh magician, Mathonwy.
Yeah, the imagery is incredibly striking. The king is physically imposing. There's no gray in his black hair but his eyes.
They carry the suffocating weight of hundreds of years of grief.
Yeah. And he tells Mathonwy that he simply cannot bear the kinetic reality of being human anymore.
He wants to escape it entirely.
He wants to escape his human grief, so he asks his friend to help him transform into a tree.
A literal tree.
But before the spell is cast, he looks at his 3 loyal leopards.
Who are getting old and struggling to survive the bitter winters.
Right, so he orders them to be transformed into immortal cats to guard his future descendants. I look at this scene and I'm struck by the absolute tragedy of it, but also the mechanics. Why a tree?
Yeah, what is the significance of this specific transformation?
Exactly.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to analyze the ontological why behind the king's decision.
Okay.
This is a profound meditation on the burden of immortality and the psychology of extreme grief.
Right.
The Red King tells Mathon Merrily that he craves an everlasting change.
An everlasting change.
Yes. He specifically asks for a form without speech, without movement.
Which makes sense when you have been alive for centuries, when you have fought wars and lost loves.
The very acts of speaking of making decisions, they become an unbearable torment.
So a tree represents total stagnation.
Stagnation, yes, but also deep roots, quiet observation, and a complete removal from the human timeline. Historically and mythologically, human-to-tree transformations, like Daphne turning into a laurel tree to escape Apollo.
Oh, right.
They are almost always about escaping a trauma that the human body cannot withstand.
Right. It's a physical petrification of emotional pain.
Precisely. But here is where I want to introduce a slightly more critical perspective on the Red King.
Okay, let's hear it.
By choosing this peaceful oblivion for himself, He commits a massive, catastrophic abdication of responsibility.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We view him as a tragic romantic figure, but his decision to abandon his children creates a monumental power vacuum.
And power vacuums are always dangerous.
As geopolitical history shows us time and time again, power vacuums inevitably lead to horrific conflict.
So his departure triggers the centuries of warfare.
Exactly. His children and their descendants down the line fight viciously for control of the legacy he left behind.
It's the ultimate tragic irony.
In seeking quiet peace for his own mind, he violently condemns his entire lineage to 900 years of bloodshed.
That is such a brilliant way to frame it. He buys his peace with their future war.
Exactly.
And the magical mechanics of this departure are just wild. The text gives us this incredibly visceral scene.
The transformation of the leopards.
Yes. The king makes his leopards walk in a circle, and suddenly they transform into a literal ring of fire.
Sparks flying up into the canopy.
Rainbow colors washing over the glade, and when the intense heat fades, there are 3 cats sitting on a branch.
Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius.
Right. One is copper, one is orange, and one is pale gold.
The alchemy of turning apex predators into domestic-sized immortal guardians is fascinating.
It really is. And then comes the king's turn. Mathonwe uses his ash wand, and slim green shoots start sprouting directly from the king's flesh.
He grows taller, wider.
Leaves cover his branches like tiny mirrors reflecting the autumn fire. But the detail that really sticks with me.
The face.
Yes. The one that makes this horrific and beautiful at the same time is the transition of his face. As his human features fade into the rough bark, the tears falling from his dark eyes turn a deep, viscous berry red.
Coursing down the newly formed trunk like blood.
Exactly. Mathonwe is so shattered by this that he casts a prophetic spell promising that one day the king's children will find him.
And you, the listener, you know exactly who those descendants are in the present day.
Right. You know, Charlie, who can travel into photographs.
You know, Tancred, who can summon violent storms.
Billy, who can speak the language of animals.
And on the darker side of the bloodline, Manfred Bloor.
Oh, yeah. Manfred, who possesses that paralyzing, deeply invasive hypnotism. So it really makes you think about the concept of legacy. We usually think of legacy as wealth or a family business.
Right, a house or money. But how would you handle inheriting a literal 900-year-old magical burden from a grieving ancestor?
This raises an important question about the nature of the endowments themselves.
They aren't just parlor tricks. They are fragments of an ancient, unresolved psychological fracture.
A psychological fracture. I like that.
The magic is a manifestation of the Red King's original power, fractured and diluted, but still inherently tied to that initial trauma.
So it's not a family heirloom you can put on a shelf and ignore?
No, it's an inheritance of responsibility, and in many cases an inheritance of highly concentrated neuroses.
The endowed children are fundamentally shaped by a war they didn't start.
Exactly. And that legacy brings us directly to the inciting incident of the present-day narrative.
What the source material ominously refers to as the deadly hour.
Yes, the deadly hour. This is the precise moment where the ancient dormant past aggressively forces its way into the modern ecosystem.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the execution of this deadly hour is essentially a supernatural heist.
A heist that utilizes the weather as a weapon.
Yes. We jump chronologically to the present in the dead of night. Tancred, our Stormbringer, who we know is usually quite brash and confident.
He's suddenly woken up by those 3 immortal flame cats.
Right. They infiltrate his room, and they essentially coax him out into the freezing night,
leading him up onto a high hill overlooking the sleeping city.
Through this intense magical communication, they make him understand that they need him to summon a massive, completely unseasonal snowstorm.
Now, Tancred has never made snow before.
His emotional state usually dictates his weather, right? Like anger causing lightning.
Exactly. But he manages to pull this off, blanketing the entire urban landscape in heavy, blinding snow.
But the snow isn't for aesthetics.
No, it's tactical.
It's a desperate tactical attempt by the ancient guardians to slow down a threat.
Because there is a dark figure frantically digging in the ruins of the Red King's ancient ruined castle.
We get this visceral description of a woman bent in half over the frozen earth.
Her hands literally torn and bleeding from clawing at the icy soil.
And finally, she unearths her prize. A rusty metal circle attached to an oval stem.
The Mirror of Amaret.
The Mirror of Amaret. She takes this deeply corrupted artifact straight to a specific portrait of the Red King inside Bloor's academy.
shines a light onto it.
and uses the twisted reflection to release a dark shadow that has been trapped inside the painting for centuries.
What's fascinating here is the immediate, almost geological reaction of the natural world to the unearthing of this artifact.
The text describes a literal shudder passing through the earth the exact millisecond the mirror is pulled from the soil.
I want to pause and analyze that shudder.
Okay, let's do it.
The human characters in the city are completely oblivious.
They are asleep in their warm beds.
Or even if they are awake, they simply do not possess the sensory equipment to feel the ontological shift happening beneath their feet.
Right, because humans have insulated themselves from the earth with concrete, with technology, with logic.
But the animals haven't.
No, they operate on a much more primal, intuitive frequency.
They possess seismic sensitivities. They literally sense the awakening of an ancient, deeply traumatic evil before the humans even have the vocabulary to realize they are in danger.
It's like how dogs and birds act erratically right before a massive earthquake hits.
Except here, the earthquake is entirely metaphysical.
Right, exactly.
It's a pure survival instinct that bypasses the cerebral cortex entirely.
And it triggers a mass, desperate exodus of pets from the entire city.
They don't wait for a news report. They don't wait for logical confirmation of danger.
They feel the absolute corruption bleeding into the soil and they evacuate.
It's a profound commentary on how hyperrationality can actually be a vulnerability.
It really is. The logistics and the chaotic reality of this exodus are incredibly heartbreaking, especially when we look at the specific characters involved.
Benjamin's dog, for instance.
Yes, Charlie's best friend, Benjamin, he literally just gets back from a grueling 7-month trip to Hong Kong.
And the very first thing he wants to do is see his beloved yellow dog, Runner Bean.
The thing that has been keeping him going. He runs into his house full of anticipation, and the dog is just gone.
The emotional anchor of his home is missing.
Then you have Sedilio's cat Pudding.
Pudding is the exception that proves the rule.
Right, because she only stays behind for purely sensory reasons. She happens to be deaf.
And Fidelio's brother had a ridiculously loud rock band practicing in the basement, creating so much vibrational interference that she didn't feel the shudder.
It's such a specific detail. And then we have one of the most remarkable subplots involving the animals.
Rembrandt.
The incredibly brave black rat who belongs to Billy Raven.
Rembrandt doesn't just run, he organizes.
He does. He reports back to Billy about the terrifying shudder, and then he actually unlocks a secret ancient door in the Pet's Cafe.
To lead a massive caravan of animals through forgotten underground tunnels to escape the city limits.
It paints this terrifying picture of the city being entirely stripped of its innocence.
Stripped of its connection to nature.
Leaving only the oblivious humans behind, locked in a cage with this newly awakened invisible shadow.
It's a highly sophisticated metaphor. The city, stripped of its animals, becomes a sterile, highly vulnerable environment. We're asking you, the listener, to really think about animal instincts versus human awareness in your own life.
How often do we routinely ignore our own internal shudders?
Exactly. How many times have you walked into a room or met a person or started a job and felt a deep, inexplicable sense of dread only to rationalize it away?
We convince ourselves that because we can't see the danger logically, it must not exist.
But the animals in Nimmo's narrative don't make that fatal error.
No, they trust their biological and spiritual read on the environment, and they remove themselves from the toxicity immediately.
Which is incredibly smart.
Speaking of trust your gut and removing yourself from a toxic environment, that perfectly transitions us to the wilderness.
Which acts as the geographical antithesis to the corrupt city.
Right. Charlie obviously cannot just let the animals disappear. He is driven by his loyalty to his friends, so he sets out to find them.
He gets woken up at dawn by a mysterious girl named Naren.
And the visual contrast here is so deliberate. She's wearing this bright, sunshine yellow coat.
Which cuts through the dreary, oppressive, heavy white snow of the city like a beacon.
It really does. She leads Charlie out of the urban environment and to this terrifying, icy iron bridge.
Suspended over a roaring, violent river.
It is the classic mythological threshold. There is literally a sign that says, "Danger, unsafe bridge," and it's shedding massive icicles into the dark water below.
But Charlie has to cross it to leave his known world.
He has to. On the other side, hidden deep within a vast ancient forest, they find a sanctuary.
All the missing animals from the city have gathered here.
And this is where Charlie finally meets Naren's adoptive father, a man named Bartholomew Bloor.
Bartholomew is, without a doubt, one of the most compelling and philosophically complex figures in this entire text.
I agree completely. For those familiar with the lore, the name Bloor is synonymous with cruelty control and dark magic.
But Bartholomew is essentially the white sheep of this malevolent family.
He is the son of the ancient cruel patriarch Ezekiel Bloor.
And Bartholomew's backstory isn't just a footnote. It's a study in pure, unadulterated tragedy and the cruelty of institutional families.
Decades ago, he went on an expedition to the Himalayas.
He survived a devastating avalanche, which is a miracle in itself.
And was rescued by a mysterious, secluded mountain tribe. It took him a full year to recover from 2 shattered legs and a severe head wound.
When he finally managed to reach a telephone to call his family back in the city, the response he got was chilling.
His family, led by Ezekiel, informed him that they had simply assumed he was dead.
They hadn't mounted a search.
No, they had already liquidated his assets and sold his house.
And then the most devastating detail of all. His beloved wife, Mary, upon being told by the Bloors that he was dead.
She went to an empty theater and literally danced herself to death in a fugue state of absolute grief.
Faced with this horrifying, unfathomable reality, Bartholomew made a radical, defining choice.
He chose not to go back.
Exactly. I want to push back on how we usually view heroes in fantasy.
Usually the hero returns to defeat the corrupt family, right?
Right. But Bartholomew chose to stay hidden in the wilderness rather than return to a family that was so inherently toxic.
So aggressively destructive that they effectively killed his wife and erased his existence out of sheer convenience.
He became an isolationist.
And what an isolationist life he built. He ended up traveling the world, adopting Naren in China after a catastrophic flood, marrying a woman named Meng.
And physically constructing his own sanctuary away from the Bloor influence.
But what really strikes me is the conversation he has with Charlie about the nature of truth.
He warns Charlie about how history actually works.
Yes. He says, and I love this, that written histories are edited, embellished, shorn of the facts.
He insists that only the traveler, the one who actually walks the earth, finds the true history hidden in men's heads and hearts.
And you see this philosophy reflected in his home. It's an archive of truth.
The cottage is covered wall-to-wall in breathtaking mountain photographs.
Capturing moments in time that cannot be edited by the Bloors.
And the yard is filled with all the missing pets who knew exactly where to find safety.
You've got Emma's duck, Gabriel's 20 gerbils, Lysander's cursing parrot Homer,
who was casually perched on top of a blue boa constrictor's cage.
It's this utopian, chaotic harmony of nature.
And before Charlie leaves to smuggle his friend's pets back into the dangerous city, Bartholomew gifts him an artifact.
But it's not a magical weapon in the traditional sense. It's a photograph.
Specifically, a picture of Bartholomew standing in the snow, taken years ago by Charlie's missing father, Lyle.
That photograph is a profoundly pivotal artifact.
It bridges the gap between Bartholomew's chosen isolation and Charlie's desperate need for connection.
Right.
But Bartholomew's entire existence in the narrative serves as a vital, highly debatable lesson for the listener.
We are conditioned to believe that the ultimate act of bravery is staying and fighting a corrupt system from within.
But Bartholomew posits a different kind of courage.
Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is recognize that a system or a family is fundamentally unfixable.
And walking away from that toxic heritage entirely is the only way to survive.
Bartholomew severed his ties with the generational darkness of the Bloor legacy.
And actively channeled his energy into building a new, healthy chosen family with Naren and Meng.
He created a sanctuary.
But, and this is where the debate lies, by removing himself from the board, did he leave children like Charlie to face the music alone?
Is isolationism a form of peace, or is it much like the Red King turning into a tree, another abdication of responsibility? That is such a heavy parallel. Bartholomew turning his back on the city is a modern echo of the Red King turning into a tree.
Both wanted to escape the pain of their legacy.
But you're right, Charlie doesn't have the luxury of walking away. He is deeply entrenched in the volatility of the magic.
And as we see when he gets back to the academy, magic is incredibly dangerous when left unchecked by proper guidance.
We get a sequence of 3 distinct, highly chaotic events that really highlight the sheer peril of these endowments.
First, we have Olivia Vertigo.
Yes, Olivia. She's an immensely powerful illusionist, but she's also a deeply frustrated teenager.
She gets so annoyed by the other girls in her dormitory, constantly crying over their vanished pets, that she loses her temper.
And conjures a massive, terrifying, greenish-gray alligator right in the middle of the Gothic hallway.
It's not a cute illusion. It's got razor-sharp teeth. It's aggressively charging at Charlie.
And girls are literally fainting against the stone walls in sheer terror.
Then you have Charlie's use of magic.
Right. He takes that photograph Bartholomew gave him, and he uses his endowment to travel inside the image, stepping into the snowy past.
He is desperate beyond reason to see the man behind the camera, his lost father, Lyle.
But Charlie loses his anchor to the present. He gets trapped in the blinding, freezing snow of the memory.
We get this horrifying physiological description. Tiny particles of ice are actually slipping out of Charlie's mouth in the real world.
He is seconds away from literally freezing to death inside a piece of paper.
He's only saved because his magical guardian, a silver moth, physically bites his hand and painfully yanks him back to the present timeline.
And finally, the most horrifying event of all, because it targets the mundane. Charlie's wonderful, incredibly normal grandmother Maisie eats a poisoned prawn
from a gourmet grocery basket that was actually meant for Uncle Peyton.
What's fascinating here is the stark, terrifying contrast in how the magic is deployed across these three incidents.
And the cascading consequences it brings.
Let's analyze Olivia first.
She represents the danger of raw power without emotional regulation. She uses her illusion recklessly, almost arrogantly, out of petty annoyance.
It's a dangerous lack of discipline that we often see in institutions that fail to properly mentor their students.
Then you have Charlie, whose use of magic is entirely born of deep emotional desperation and generational trauma.
He is so driven to fill the void left by his father that he willingly risks his own biological life nearly succumbing to hypothermia within a two-dimensional photograph.
It shows how grief can make magic self-destructive.
But the attack on Maisie,
that represents a monumental, terrifying escalation in the narrative's conflict.
It's moving from the battlefield to the living room.
Exactly. This isn't kids practicing sloppy magic in a hallway. This is targeted, lethal, sophisticated sorcery.
It is a highly advanced cryogenic spell, and how is it delivered? Through something as utterly banal as a gourmet grocery delivery.
It demonstrates a massive shift in tactics. The villains are no longer just operating within the gothic shadowed walls of Bloor's academy.
They are aggressively, surgically targeting the domestic safety of the Bone family.
They're turning the concept of home into a live war zone.
And the visual imagery of Maisie freezing is incredibly vivid and frankly deeply disturbing.
She's standing in the middle of her warm, familiar kitchen, completely frozen solid.
Her soft pink Angora sweater has transfigured into these bristling, lethal, icy spikes.
The mundane reality of water pooling around her brand new red sneakers makes the magic feel so much more intrusive.
And the flame cats Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, who we've seen do these incredible, miraculous things, who we assume are these infallible, ancient guardians. They try to save her.
They form a literal ring of fire around her frozen feet, leaping and creating intense magical sparks to thaw her out.
Maisie actually manages to blink twice, and she almost smiles, giving us this agonizing sliver of hope.
But the spell is just too strong, and the cats are too far removed from their original power source.
The ancient guardians exhaust themselves completely. Their flames dim, and they fail.
So the family in this bizarre, tragic pivot has to unceremoniously store their frozen grandmother in the upstairs bathroom tub,
putting a sleep mask over her eyes to give her some dignity.
So what does this all mean? It's this incredibly jarring mix of domestic comedy and absolute suffocating horror.
It really forces the listener to grapple with the double-edged sword of asymmetrical power.
When does a unique talent, a genetic endowment, cross that invisible threshold from being a wondrous gift into becoming a profound, uncontrollable danger?
We see it's a danger not just to oneself, as in Charlie's near suicide via photograph, but to innocent, unendowed bystanders, like the fainting girls in the hallway or poor mortal Maisie.
Power without absolute rigid control or without strict ethical boundaries is inherently destructive.
The failure of the flame cats is also a crucial thematic point. Ancient safeguards are no longer sufficient to protect against the modern weaponization of magic. Okay, let's unpack that weaponization of magic, because speaking of power without ethical boundaries, we have to transition to the massive climax occurring back at Bloor's academy.
The 100 Heads dinner.
Right. Dr. Bloor has kicked all the regular students out for the weekend, creating this eerie, empty campus.
But Charlie and Billy are on restriction, so they are trapped inside.
Naturally utilizing their sheer audacity, Charlie and Billy sneak into the cavernous underground dining hall.
They hide under a massive floor-length banqueting table to eavesdrop.
And what they see is essentially a summit of global magical corruption.
The room is filled with head teachers from magical academies all over the world. 100 of them representing different cultures, wearing turbans, kimonos, embroidered velvet coats.
It's the G20 summit of evil sorcerers.
And Dr. Bloor, acting as the master of ceremonies, stands up to make a terrifying announcement.
He tells this assembly of highly educated, influential leaders that Count Harkin Badlock, the ancient shadow, has been successfully released into the world.
This entire sequence perfectly encapsulates the horrifying, institutionalized nature of the evil at Bloor's Academy.
It elevates the conflict from a family feud to a global conspiracy.
Before Dr. Bloor even gets to the revelation of the shadow, we have old Ezekiel Bloor casually bragging to the room about his methodology.
He talks openly about removing endowed children from their parents for the greater good,
Treating literal kidnapping and psychological conditioning as a standard, commendable administrative policy.
The institutional complacency in that room is staggering. None of the 100 educators object. They applaud.
But the revelation of Count Harkin is the true existential terror.
Let's break down who Harkin is.
This is a 900-year-old sorcerer of immense, unparalleled dark power,
He originally lost his love, the Queen Berenice, to the Red King in a duel.
and was subsequently trapped as a bodiless shadow in a painting for centuries.
And Dr. Bloor reveals the chilling speed of Harkin's adaptation.
Within 10 minutes of being released in the mirror, Harkin absorbed and learned the modern English language.
Shortly after that, he began aggressively acclimating to modern finance, global politics, and corporate power structures. He didn't retreat to a dark tower, he went to Wall Street.
Exactly. But the most shocking twist of all the micro-level betrayal that underpins this macro-level threat comes when the beloved, sweet, seemingly harmless piano teacher, Miss Crystal, stands up.
She confesses to the entire room of global elites that she was the one who physically found the mirror of Emeret in the frozen earth.
She was the one with the bleeding hands. She released the count.
And her motive, it wasn't for global domination, it wasn't ideological.
It was out of pure, festering, petty spite.
Because Charlie's father, Lyle, rejected her romantic advances 14 years ago.
Here's where it gets so incredibly tense. The juxtaposition is masterclass.
You have Charlie and Billy hiding for their lives under this table, listening to this cosmic, world-altering betrayal.
But they aren't alone down there.
They are trapped under the heavy linen with blessed Ezekiel Bloor's ancient, blind, and incredibly smelly dog.
Suddenly, one of the visiting professors, whose specific magical endowment is a highly heightened predatory sense of smell, stops the meeting.
He announces that he smells boy flesh under the table.
The tension is unbearable. They are seconds away from being dragged out and likely executed by a room full of evil sorcerers.
To save them, Billy has to utilize his animal communication powers in the most absurd way possible.
He silently commands the ancient dog Blessed to unleash the most massive, noxious, room-clearing fart of its entire life.
And Blessed absolutely delivers.
The smell is so sudden and so horrific that these dignified, terrifying professors are completely disgusted.
The scent of the boys is entirely masked by the sheer biological warfare of the dog, and Blessed gets kicked out of the dining hall, saving their lives.
It's an incredibly comedic, gross-out moment, a classic staple of middle-grade fiction, but it is immediately violently juxtaposed with the darkest reality of the series so far.
While they are breathing a sigh of relief under the table above them, Miss Crystal is calmly declaring that her own son Joshua will be used as a sleeper agent to control Charlie.
And she finishes by assuring the room that Count Harkin will personally ensure Charlie's father Lyle never wakes up from his magically induced coma.
The extrapolation we have to make here is deeply chilling.
We are forced to speculate on the sheer danger of a 900-year-old sorcerer, a being completely devoid of any modern morality or empathy, actively mastering modern capitalist and political power structures.
Magic is dangerous enough when it's confined to wands and spells.
But magic combined with modern politics, corporate wealth, and institutional authority. That is a terrifying prospect.
Harkin isn't just casting hexes in a forest, he's infiltrating the very fabric of modern society.
He recognizes that true power in the 21st century isn't just a fireball, it's a monopoly.
And Miss Crystal's involvement perfectly demonstrates the banality of evil.
The catalyst for the potential end of the world wasn't a grand, dark prophecy, it was a bruised ego and a 14-year-old grudge.
Which brings us directly to the final subplot, and it shows exactly how the Count is operating in the modern world, utilizing that capitalist structure you just mentioned.
The bewitching of Charlie's mother, Amy Bone.
Amy's mental state is incredibly fragile at this point. She is feeling profoundly isolated and overwhelmed.
Her mother is currently frozen solid in an upstairs bathtub. Her son is locked away in a dangerous academy, and she is at her breaking point.
So she decides to do something incredibly mundane to regain some sense of control. She goes to Kingdom's, the upscale local department store, to aggressively complain to the manager about the poisoned prawn that froze her mother.
But instead of getting customer service, she is seamlessly lured into an elevator that bypasses the regular floors.
And takes her to the exclusive top floor, straight into the office of the store's mysterious new owner, Hart Noble.
Meanwhile, at the exact same time, back at the house, Charlie, who has escaped the school, Uncle Peyton and Miss Ingledew are opening a package that just arrived from the wilderness.
It's Bartholomew Bloor's travel diaries.
The structural contrast between these two simultaneous events is brilliant narrative design by Nimmo.
Let's analyze Hart Noble's psychological warfare first, because it is a masterclass in manipulation.
He recognizes Amy's deep loneliness, her acute fatigue, and her unresolved lingering grief over her missing husband, Lyle.
He doesn't attack her with a wand, he attacks her with consumerism and luxury.
The top floor of his store isn't a retail space. It's a surreal, highly curated sensory trap designed to overwhelm the nervous system.
The text describes carpets made of thick Arctic bear fur sofas constructed of pony skin and walls made entirely of mirrors that distort reality.
He plies her with exotic, unsettling hors d'oeuvres made of eagle meat, and he constantly pours her enchanted champagne.
He uses his immense charm and the intoxicating environment to weave a subtle psychological enchantment over her.
He is systematically breaking down her emotional defenses, validating her exhaustion, until she makes the fatal choice to willingly remove her wedding ring.
That moment is so visceral.
It is entirely symbolic. Taking off the ring is a massive, tangible severing of her loyalty to her missing husband.
It is her subconsciously giving up hope.
By removing the ring, she breaks her own internal ward, allowing Noble to effectively lure her into agreeing to be his date at the upcoming grand ball.
Now contrast this insidious, glittering manipulation with what Charlie is experiencing at the exact same moment across town.
Charlie is reading Bartholomew's diaries.
The diaries aren't glittering, they aren't offering champagne, they are offering the hard, brutal, unvarnished truth.
Bartholomew writes explicitly about Count Harkin Badlock cutting through the myth and stating plainly, he is a hunter and a murderer. He steals souls and breaks hearts.
The visual of Amy returning home after this encounter is so eerie, it feels like a horror movie. Charlie sees her walk through the door, and she is completely fundamentally transformed.
The text specifically says she is gleamy and glittery.
She's wearing this bewitched, incredibly expensive, deep blue dress that she claims was a spontaneous gift from Hart Noble.
She smells of a completely unfamiliar, heavy perfume.
Her hair is unnaturally glossy, and she's acting like a total stranger, frivolous, distant, unconcerned about Maisie in the tub.
When Charlie looks at her hand and realizes her wedding ring is gone, he feels an actual physical stab of pain in his chest.
So what does this all mean for the narrative? It connects directly back to Count Harkin's return and his new modus operandi.
Hart Noble is clearly an alias, or at the very least a high-level agent of the Count.
He is using his modern wealth, literally owning the means of commerce via a department store, to systematically, ruthlessly dismantle Charlie's support system from the outside in.
First, they neutralize the grandmother with a poisoned grocery delivery, taking out the matriarch.
Then they psychologically bewitch the mother with department store luxury, taking out the emotional core of the family.
All of this is happening while Charlie is bogged down fighting for his life against alligators and shadows behind the locked doors of Bloor's academy.
It is a meticulously executed, multi-pronged, asymmetric attack on a child's foundation.
The Count isn't challenging Charlie to a duel in the courtyard. He is attacking the domestic sphere, turning the presumed safety of home, family, and even local commerce into an active, hostile battleground.
He is isolating his enemy before the final strike. It is an absolutely incredible, exhausting journey to analyze. To summarize the sheer scope of what we've covered today, we've gone from the melancholic prologue of a grieving ancient king turning himself into a weeping tree to escape his pain,
to a modern city entirely eerily devoid of animals because the earth itself shuddered in terror.
We've seen the absurdity and horror of a grandmother frozen solid in a bathtub after eating a tainted prawn,
A boy nearly freezing to death inside a two-dimensional memory.
and the terrifying, highly calculated return of a heartbreaking, soul-stealing sorcerer who has already infiltrated the local economy via the department store.
It's a breathtaking deep dive into a world where magic is mostly a heavy generational burden, and the past is an active predator always hunting you down.
It truly is a remarkable evolution of the source material.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to ponder.
I want to draw directly on Bartholomew Bloor's quote about the nature of historiography.
Bartholomew warned Charlie that written histories are heavily edited, embellished, and ruthlessly shorn of inconvenient facts by the victors, the institutions, and the powerful.
If the histories we rely on in our own non-magical reality are equally curated by those who hold the pen and the power, what shadows are currently lurking in the margins of our real-world histories?
What ancient grudges, what buried systemic injustices or deliberately hidden truths are just waiting for the right mirror, the right political or social catalyst to release them violently back into our modern world?
I invite you to deeply question the narratives you've been taught to accept as absolute, unvarnished truth.
Because as this text shows us sometimes, the most dangerous destructive shadows aren't hiding in magical paintings. They are hiding in plain sight, right in the pages of the history books we read every single day.